Welcome to this week's episode of Crystal Confab. We are so excited to be talking about this crystal today, and I think Nicholas is extremely excited. We've talked about stones of nobility in the last few weeks. We've talked about sapphires, we've talked about ruby, and so, of course, we must, otherwise, Nicholas would probably threaten to leave the show, talk about emerald. And that's exactly what we're talking about today. Joining me is Kyle and Nicholas, and we are talking about what I really love about emerald is that it's part of a family called the beryl family. And I just think of a bunch of old women sitting around knitting called the beryls and that type of thing. But people may not realize that some of our other much loved crystals, such as aquamarine, heliodor, and morganite, they're all part of the beryl family, aren't they, Kyle?
Absolutely. The beryl family is all beryllium silicates, and they are beautiful in their perfect formation. They are all hexagonal, and your pure, colorless beryl is called goshenite, originally found in Goshen, the United States. Is that I don't know exactly where it is. I've forgotten. Nicholas should be able to let me know. But I know it was named after where it was found. This is an etched Brazilian piece, really interesting and totally colorless. You'd think it was quartz. Then you have Heliodor, yellow, named for the sun god. I love Heliodor and aquamarine because they're both colored by iron, and it is one ion of iron difference that changes the color from blue to yellow, which is really cool. And I can actually show you in this aquamarine that goes into Heliodor from Namibia. I love to call it Aquador. You can call it whatever you want. Then we have red beryl. Red beryl comes from the Wawa Mountains, which I just love to say, which is too much fun. Definitely the rarest and most expensive of your beryls. It will cost you several tens of $1,000s a carat cut. And then a really rare, interesting one, black beryl. Weird, included, kind of interesting. There is also Machiche beryl, which is a really dark blue beryl that you find in Brazil that actually changes color when it comes out of the earth. And then there's even orange beryl and green beryl that you find out there as well. And it's just an amazing family. And they're strong gems. Remember, beryls are 8 on the hardness. So they're a good, sturdy gem that actually lasts well in jewelry. So look for all of the colors of the rainbow, please.
And do you find, Kyle, that the beryls are good as a family for something in particular?
I literally have all of my beryls in one grid together. They all live together in one grid and they all access all of the elements and they connect to Fae and they connect to light and joy and all of this really uplifted energy. I actually have a crystal skull carved, 2 in morganite, 3 in emerald, 2 in aquamarine, and 2 in heliodor as well. I have a full collection of skulls carved in this energy, and I really love that elemental. You get water, you get fire, you get earth, you get air, you get it all coming in together, and it really is empowering. And I think it's a great follow on from Chiastolite last week, we're talking about everything coming together. Maybe pop your barrels in.
Yeah, I love that idea. And it's funny you talk about the elemental beings. I find the beryls to be probably the best family group for bringing in elemental energy. I love either Heliodor or Goshenite for the Fey realms. I love aquamarine. It's said to be one of the favorite stones of the merfolk. I think Bixbite is really great, or red beryl is really great for dragon energy. It's got real power in it. And then, of course, emerald is really great for gnome energy. And that will kind of come unpacked as we talk about this. But I think me and Kyle are just torturing Nicholas off camera at the moment because he's just like, let me talk about Emerald, and we're just having a dialogue here. Nicholas, tell us all about why you love Emerald and why I asked Nicholas if he had a ranking top, but it's in your top family. Is that right?
Yeah. I'm sure all of us being in the public sphere working with crystals, we get asked on a pretty regular basis, what is your favorite crystal? What's your top five? And I have favorites for different reasons at different times. My favorite thing to collect, hands down, is quartz, because you'll never get bored. It's what started my collection. My favorite thing to work with therapeutically for me in my journey has been rhodonite. My favorite thing, just for the sheer beauty of it, is petersite, but the stone whose mythology and magic just floors me every time I get a chance to have that intimate connection to it and its story is emerald. And what a magical and subversive stone it has been throughout history. So I'm going to give us like the short version of the history to today, because I really want to like jump into this like deeper symbolism that I've experienced with emerald. We get emerald in English from French emeraude, which is, derived from Latin smaragdos, which comes from Greek smaragdos, which ultimately comes from even older roots. But in Greek, it just meant greenstone. So our ancient emeralds, much like our ancient sapphires and our ancient rubies, were just things that color. Um, and what we find in emerald is a lot of history that connects it to the natural world, because green things grow from the earth. Emeralds are green and found in the earth. They're extraordinarily rare. True emeralds are formed um, with tiny little bits of trace chromium in them. There's some debate. Some gemological institutions will honorarily allow beryl colored by vanadium to be called beryl, or to be called emerald. Others absolutely will not. So I'm in the will not camp. But the magic of emerald is in part linked to the fact that they don't form like most other beryls. A lot of our gem quality beryls we're going to find in igneous environments. We're going to find them in pegmatites, which are, think of granite, but with much larger components, because it cooled so much more slowly and gave time for these crystals to form in very high quality gems. And a lot of our really good gem materials in general come from pegmatites, but not emeralds. They form in metamorphic environments. We're going to find them largely in schist, occasionally in some other metamorphic rocks. Very rarely there's a well-known Chinese deposit that is formed in primarily in an igneous rock. But what is happening is the beryllium essential to the make of beryl. It's a beryllium aluminum cyclosilicate, and the chromium that gives it that rich green color almost never occur together. So what we need is for literally the making of mountains, the folding of landscapes in half, the doubling of them over, the squeezing and stretching, and then the icing on the cake is a little bit of extra hydrothermal activity going on. And in those little pockets in the in between, we can bring together these other ingredients, the beryllium and the chromium, with the very common silicon and oxygen and aluminum and any other trace elements might be in there to give us emeralds. But because of that kind of tortuous and arduous history, geologically speaking, they're usually not very big, and they're usually not very transparent. They're often riddled with flaws of all different kinds. We usually find them in, as Kyle showed, schistose kind of rock, which is a really high grade metamorphism. So I've got some Brazilian emeralds here in Matrix. This was a gift from my dear friend Tikita. Um, and when we're really lucky, we'll find big emeralds, or we'll find transparent emeralds. Sometimes we find them both at the same time. My largest is this one here from Ethiopia, and it's got this beautiful biotite, relic of the schist it came out of here. And this is unusually large for an emerald. It's not unusually high quality. I could afford only one of those modifiers, and it was not quality, so I went for quantity over quality for once. But emeralds in history have been used, like true emeralds, have been used since the Neolithic era in northern Africa, and they were fashioned into at least one headdress or crown that has been found. There's some rough, dark emeralds in it. There's also bone and natural resin holding the whole thing together. We see inventory records from Babylon that record the sale of emeralds around 6,000 years ago. We can't be sure they're the same species, but they were a precious green stone. We've got large-scale mining of emeralds that takes place for the very first time in Egypt in the mines at Wadi Sekait, which under the kind of Roman Hellenistic occupation period was renamed Mons Smaragdus, or Mount Emerald, because of how rich the emeralds were there. And this was around 1500 BCE, so like 3,500 years ago. We find stones there that were buried with the dead and worn as jewelry by the living. Inscribed stones were used as talismans. These were deeply spiritual divinely touched gemstones. Those Egyptian mines were exploited by the Roman and the Byzantine empires, and they spread like wildfire, but eventually they were exhausted. We find some emeralds in Austria in the Habaktal region. More recently, we get them from places like Pakistan, Afghanistan, China, Brazil, Zimbabwe, and this very small pocket that was quite prolific for a moment up in Ethiopia, but by far the finest emeralds that we tend to find are from Colombia, and they definitely changed the course of emeralds history. But the availability of those emeralds is linked to things like colonialism, imperialism, the extraction of wealth via human labor, and the subjugation of brown and indigenous folks. So it is complicated, and emeralds are a product of this very complicated history. Folklorically, the magic of them is linked to things like the power of Venus. In Western European and Northern European witch folklore, we see that the locus of the mythical site where the witch's sabbat takes place is sometimes called Mount Venus. It is also occasionally called Mount Emerald, Mons Smaragdus. In some of these trial accounts, we see that the gem is associated with the god Thoth in Egypt, who is the father of writing and measure and calendars and magic. And so there's so much of this magical lore that is wrapped up in this stone, but there are a couple of like big myths. We can't unpack the whole stories on all of them, but they are etched indelibly in our psyche, and they're also very magical. We have this story of an emerald that is said to have fallen from the crown of the most beautiful of all angels. And when it fell to earth, some say it shattered, some say it stayed whole and was carved into a great big tablet upon which were written the instructions for the alchemical art. In another version, it becomes the Holy Grail. In yet another, it's set in a ring that is gifted to King Solomon that he uses to command the spirits that build the first temple. There are so many of these stories that link emerald to magic. And in the modern kind of new age interpretations of emerald, we see a really strong connection to this Venusian quality of love, and not just love as a romantic situation, but love as a force that changes matter itself. I really love an interpretation that comes to us from a practice called gemstone energy medicine, or sometimes just gem therapy, which sounds like it should mean the same thing as just saying crystal healing. I assure you it does not. But in this specific practice, emerald is thought of as like the archetypal carrier of the green ray, the ray that represents the ability for things to materialize, to come into existence. And the like deeper message of the green ray is that everything we touch is a product of divine love. Emerald is considered a master healer because love is the force that heals everything from the inside out. And when I compare that to the myths of the Holy Grail, the Emerald Tablet, Lucifer's crown, I see this kind of storyline that emerges. And we live in a world where if we just listen to the loudest voices in any room coming from whatever medium, we hear messages that we aren't good enough. We aren't pretty enough. We aren't wealthy enough. We aren't successful enough. I'm no longer young enough. I'm also not old enough. I'm not enough in any way. And it's really hard to feel like you matter when you aren't enough. It is so hard to feel worthy of just about anything, let alone success and love and fulfillment in life. And Emerald inverts this narrative in a really big way. The message of Emerald is the message of radical self-love. Emerald tells us that there's nothing specific you have to do to be worthy of love. There's no action that you can take to earn it. There's no milestone that makes you meritorious. You exist. That's it. Therefore, you are worthy of love. You matter because you are matter. And that idea of matter is linked up to in Latin, it comes from the same root as the word mother. We're born as products of this divine love, this unconditional love that moves mountains to birth these sacred green stones. It is maybe the love and the worthiness of a rebel angel who decided not to start a war in heaven, but to be a symbol of light. Lucifer, after all, literally means light bearer, and brought that light from the spiritual into the material to become the soul inhabiting the matter that is our planet. This is similar to the myth of the planetary logos, the embodiment of our earth, who in Vedic principles is described as Sanat Kumara, a serpent-like being who fell from the heavens, who descended from the planet Venus to take up residence in the middle of the earth, who is the king of the Nagas, the kind of serpent-like spirits who, among other things, hoard precious gems, including emeralds. We see in the crown of Lucifer the opportunity to be our own light bearers, to be crowned sovereign through reclaiming the worthiness of love. And when we love ourselves that radically, we go, well, you know what? If I can change the way I feel about this, if I can change myself, can't I change the world too? I believe in a world, me as Nicholas, I believe in a world where each of us is owed nothing less than that sense of fulfillment, that sense of worth, that sense of hope that comes from knowing you are loved in that way. And I aim to see a world that is more just and equitable through that power of love. And that is not an easy task. Climbing Mount Venus to reach the summit and see that change is scary, but we don't have to do it alone because we do it together in love. And when we do, we find the tablet there that has the instructions for alchemy. We find the Holy Grail said to have been carved from the self-same emerald, and it is the crucible in which alchemy takes place. And the secret here is that it's not really about finding a magical cup or a rock with some writing on it or a crown with some fabulous gem. The emerald that is all of these things is the emerald of our heart. It is the gem that we are. It is the light we radiate into the world. It is the magic we live and breathe each moment, if only we could remember it. And if more of us do, it's going to be a better world. So that's why I love it.
I love what you've shared there, and I think it's really quite poignant at the moment about, I love that term, you matter because you are matter. That's brilliant. And I heard a really great quote in the last few days about it's not about wokeness, it's about kindness. And it's just about being kind to one another, but also being kind to yourself. And I think what you've just shared there is Emerald does that on a really profound, but also a really simple way. Would you agree, Nicholas?
Yeah, I mean, a question I ask myself a lot lately, and one I'm endeavoring to ask myself more is when faced with an option, like commenting on social media, replying to an email that I think is outrageous, is this answer going to be perceived as loving? Is this answer going to generate more kindness in the world? Is this answer going to maintain or spread that flame of radical love? And sometimes the answer is get the F out of here. And that is the kindest thing you can do because someone else's unkindness is harming more people. And other times it's swallowing your pride and saying, thank you so much for your message. Or even better yet, to the strangers on the internet, saying nothing at all.
Mm.
Because I can have that fulfillment and that light and that love within me. I don't have to go exercise that anywhere where it's not wanted or welcome. But it's also standing up for the people you care about, yourself, your loved ones, the marginalized people of the world. Like, we're all in this together. Why not try to make the world a kinder place?
Why not? Exactly. I'd love to expand also on what you shared with that aspect of healing and love as well. You mentioned the angel Lucifer. I've found, and again, we say often on Confab that we're not right. We just share our perspectives. And I've always matched the four noble crystals of diamond, sapphire, emerald, and ruby to the four archangels. So I pair ruby with Michael, sapphire with Gabriel, diamond with Uriel, and so Raphael with emerald. And I find Raphael a really interesting angel because at first sight you go, he's the healing angel, and that's the angel you call upon whenever you're sick or you need healing in that way. But each of these angels is also a governor of one of the different magical elements. And so Raphael is also of the element of air. So what we have here is we have an angel that's to do with healing and physical healing, but then also air, which is to do with the intellect. Now, when we look at emerald, it's green. It has, as we've been talking about, this earthly kind of quality about it, but then has associations with Thoth and wisdom as well. What I love for someone working in the health industry and the holistic healing industry is, as you know, maybe we can thank Louise L. Hay, or there are probably people who preceded her, but it's coming into modern understanding now, is that our mental state and our physical state are interlinked. And I love this idea of working with Emerald and working with Raphael, not just saying, can you fix my sore knee? Can you stop these migraines? But looking at, okay, well, what's happening on a surface mental level? Is there too much stress in my life? And is that causing different ailments in my body? But also there are some really great references. As I said, Louise L. Hay, You Can Heal Your Life is kind of the archetypal book, but Ina Segal's done work on it. There's another great book called Barometer of the Soul. And these help us to understand, well, okay, why are these things manifesting in my body and not in someone else's body? Why is one person smoking like a chimney and they're living to 100, and the next person is smoking like a chimney and dies of lung cancer at 35 type of thing? And I find Emerald is this great amulet for helping us with our healing and taking responsibility of our healing. We live in a culture and there is this shift where we hand over the power of our health and our healing to an expert or to a pharmaceutical. And we're like, can you just give me a tablet that will fix it? But what you'll find a lot of the time with this is that pharmaceuticals, and I'm not here to bag pharmaceuticals, but often what they do is they band-aid an issue. They don't look at the root cause. And true healing, as with whether we're talking about physical healing, mental healing, or emotional healing, or spiritual healing, encourages us to dive deeper and learn from that rather than just band-aid that. And I think Emerald brings in this really grounded energy, as Nicholas said so beautifully, a loving energy and a wise energy. Now we can see that as the angel Raphael, or we can just see it purely as that crystal manifestation of Emerald. And I think it is an amazing healing crystal for all types of healing. And it is, maybe because of its price, not celebrated as much. But again, as we've said, I have a tumbled emerald that I use a lot that would have cost me 20 Australian dollars, not much at all type of thing. So it's really beautiful on that healing work. I also want to just kind of throw in where I use emerald the most is actually with travel. And so Raphael, being the angel of air as well, is sometimes associated with travel. So I have a bit of a ritual. I fly, I'm off to Europe next week, and I come to America once a year, and I'm often in planes, and it doesn't matter how many times you get on a plane. I don't think anyone feels totally comfortable. It's a little bit scary in that way. So we want that protection, and we also want that protection, as when we're in foreign lands and unusual areas out of our comfort zone as well. So I've got into the habit of, I always have an emerald, just a tumbled stone that goes in my luggage. And I basically just say a little kind of incantation as I pop it in there and summon that to, may this emerald and my luggage end up where I end up type of thing. So that kind of protection of luggage. So if you're a little bit worried about that, that can be really great. That normally sits in this little backpack. So if you've ever seen me in person, I'm always carrying around this black backpack, which has all my essential oils in it. And funnily enough, I had some of my most precious essential oils when I went on a recent trip. And I still don't know how I did it, but I just left it at the airport. I went and got in an Uber. I was busy saying goodbye to people and organizing people in suitcase, and I left one with rare essential oils that I can't get my hands on again. But luckily enough, the best place to leave a bag is at the airport, because no one's going to pick up a bag that's just sitting there because they are worried. So luckily it was picked up by security and I got it back. but that was the emerald kind of working. But I also have a ritual that I do every time I'm flying. So this is my emerald ring that I wear. I wear emerald on this hand. I wear numite, which I consider to be one of the most powerfully protective rings on my other hand. And I wear a falcon's eye or a blue tiger's eye pendant. And just after the safety demonstration, you're normally taxiing ready for takeoff. And I put my finger on this ring. And I basically just say a little prayer to Raphael saying, please look after the well-being of myself and everyone else on this flight. May we get to our destination with no major hiccups and that type of thing as well. And so far, so good. But what I found really, really interesting is with turbulence. If ever there's turbulence on a plane, I will pop my finger straight on this ring and I visualize Raphael grabbing the plane and stabilizing it. And I find as soon as I do that, it's almost as though the turbulence will keep going, but it's downgraded a little bit. And I visualize Raphael kind of steadying the plane through that turbulence as well. What's really interesting though, here in Australia, I've found that this technique works a lot better with Qantas and Virgin than it does with Jetstar. So I don't know, and I guess who's a discount carrier in the States, Nicholas? Is it like JetBlue?
No, they're quite nice. Spirit or Frontier.
Spirit, yeah. So I would say if I was traveling around America, it would work better with something like with Delta or United, but not with Spirit type of thing. So I didn't think angels actually discriminate, but it does seem Raphael does when it comes to helping out with turbulence in that way. But, if you are a bit of a nervous traveler, I often get asked what crystals are good for when you're traveling. Those three when I'm actually on a plane, but emerald I find to be really, really great for that travel aspect as well. So anytime you want to work with Raphael, and I really encourage you to kind of dive a little bit deeper on the realm that Raphael can help with as well. He's also the governing angel of the planet Mercury. But I do find emerald is very much a Venetian stone. So that's the joy of correspondences as well. Nicholas.
I think we could also mention that in Vedic astrology, the primary gem of Mercury is emerald. So it is a stone that gets it gets a lot of attributes over history. In some Western occult traditions, it's the primary gem of Saturn. So it does have these kind of serious Saturnian qualities associated with the material realm. It's got the loving tenderness of Venus, and then it moves. Literally, it's made by the moving of tectonic plates. So yeah, I think it embodies all these things, and that really underscores why it's such a great travel gem.
Yeah, so it's amazing for love and healing. It's amazing for travel, but it's also, I guess, probably pretty good for abundance as well, wouldn't you say, Kyle?
Yeah, let's change it up a little bit. I'm going to talk about abundance. What does that mean? This is probably my favorite emerald. This is a twinned emerald on schist, and it comes from the gold fields of Western Australia. I just love, it's not big, but it is mighty powerful in its vibration. And I like to, as we've spoken about, emerald is one of the archetypal stones, and I've touched on this with ruby sapphire. It also, for me, touches on the archetype of certain people. And for me, when I've noticed emerald wearers are individuals on their own schedule. And they are people that have plenty of time, plenty of money, plenty of everything. I find emeralds to add a lushness, an abundance, a luxurious energy, and it allows us to have. And when I think about it as a visual, I'm always put into a rainforest. It gives me this like green on green on green. And there's actually a term in gemology that's really important when it comes to emeralds, and it's un jardin, which is that they look like a garden. When you look into them, they are just so amazing. They have different phases of inclusions. They'll have gas bubbles, they'll have water, they'll have 3 phases. And there is so much inside of them. And when you think about a rainforest, it is abundant. There are so many different layers of green. There are so many different plants. There are insects galore. There is the hierarchy all working together. And it's so much. And that's abundance, right? And it's all working together until we interfere. If we get involved as humans, generally we mess it up. But if we leave it, the rainforests are literally the lungs of the earth. They are the things that keep this planet breathing, right? When we have abundance, everyone is sharing in that abundance. Everyone gets to benefit from that abundance. So don't hold yourself back from having this idea of abundance and money. let's change it up. It's not always about money. It could be about time, friendship, connection, love, support. Abundance is lots, right? It's an overflow. You don't necessarily need an overflow of money. It can be useful, but often, you know, like moth to a flame, it can draw more problems, more money, more problems. And it's important to think, what do I actually need more of? I need enough money. This has been my last several years, and I've worked with it so intensely, is I have enough money. I don't need more, because I will probably spend more, because I'm still trying to do less. Like my thing over the last few years has been about doing less to achieve more, about being more efficient with our energy. Those that lie in the jungle and live in the jungle use their energy efficiently. There are nocturnal creatures, there are daytime creatures. Those that hunt quietly and slowly, and they have enough. And they have enough as a part of a whole that has enough, right? And I think that's a really important thing with Emerald. And as Nicholas said, like, it's love. Everything is love, abundance. It's all connected in the same sort of way. And I found this was my very first little crystal skull. Brazilian emerald, you can only just see like little bits of green throughout it. And it was very much, let's go on a journey into the jungle. Let's actually go out and see that there is so much, there are so many opportunities for you. There is not a lack. It changes that idea from lack to there is. There is an opportunity, there is a redirection, there is a chance for something, there is something that I can bring into myself. I'm not always going to be stuck in I can't. And that is that mentality of I'm not allowed to have enough. I can't. There's no way forward. We get kind of trapped within ourselves, and it's normal. The universe is kind of bombarding us. But if we stop and go for a walk into the jungle, into the forest, listen, there's harmony there, right? It can seem chaotic at first, but when we stop, everything is working. When we stop in our own lives, yes, there's all these things happening. There's all these predators and all these things trying to fight for the light to live, but they all live, they all exist. When we tell ourselves we have enough and we're allowed to have, we automatically change what comes to us, and we can bring more into our lives. There was a big lesson that I had with this where I was using time, and I was busy, so I had no time, and I was always busy, so I had no time. And it was this cycle of being busy, and I was being grateful for being busy because it meant I was working and I was earning, and I was like, but I don't have time, and I don't have time. And then the universe went, you want time? I'm like, yeah, I really want time. And it went, okay, here's burnout. I'm going to put you on your bottom. I'm going to force you to stop, and I'm going to make you have time. And all of a sudden, I've had all of this time, and I've been able to utilize my time better. I've been able to like stop and do enough with my day. I utilize my energy more efficiently to get what I need to get done, instead of trying to like do so much throughout. Do bits, spread it throughout. I have a work schedule that now has days off in between my days because I need a day to recover when I do something really physical. And so I now know that I have time and I'm earning enough. I'm paying my bills, right? It's the mentality of like, oh, I need to be busy because I need to earn money and I need to survive has changed to I'm working enough, I'm earning enough, I'm taking care of my physical vessel because that's what it needs and that's my priority. And that's allowing me to build up to more, right? It's that cyclical nature. There is sometimes we have lots and lots and we're doing lots and lots, and sometimes it's less and we're doing less, but we're still abundant in our choices. We still have enough for us. And I think that is one of the core messages with Emerald that has been for me specifically, is there is enough of whatever it is that you want, whatever it is that you need, there is enough of it there. Just like bring it into yourself, like draw it in, allow yourself to allow yourself to like, I like to visualize myself as I can't remember her first name, Adani, the Indian billionaire lady that wore all the emeralds to her son's wedding last year. Like those, like I just like to visualize myself in that when I'm working with my little emerald, and it's like I'm abundant, I'm a billionaire, I'm so wealthy, and I'm doing enough.
I'm so glad you took this approach when talking about abundance with Emerald, because I think a lot of people, when they do think of abundance, they're like, give me the money, it's going to bring in more of that financial wealth as well. And I love the example you talked about with, busyness versus time and work versus time. And I know, reflecting on my last few years, how I've made decisions in my life for both money and career, at the detriment probably of friendships, because sometimes I just don't have enough time to catch up with friends or nurture those friendships. And I love this idea of that Emerald helps us work out what is enough. And I wonder if that's even reflected in its energy being hexagonal. And six is often seen as a really harmonious and balancing number between, finding balance between that work life, friend, personal life, all those different things that we need to balance. How do we find that harmony? I think emerald could be a really key crystal for this. Would you say, Carl?
1000%. I think all of the beryl family with that hexagonal shape, I think apatite, beryl, quartz, even though it's trigonal, they still, when they form hexagonally, when you get those six-sided crystals, when you get that barrel, like there's just this secure strength and balance. And I just don't think anything compares to the way emerald works. I think green garnet comes close, but I don't think anything compares to how emerald is. So don't worry about it being clear. Don't worry about it being like perfectly transparent. Just work with whatever emerald you can connect to. My very first piece, and the piece that I had for the longest time, is this little tumble. And it's innocuous, and it was a pocket piece that I had in that little crystal pocket every day for so long. And I think we get too hell-bent on, size and price, and emerald is something that's skyrocketed, especially over the last 5 years. Like, it has gone up, especially gem stuff. And I think we go, oh, I can't have. And that in turn is that lesson of emerald is, no, yes, I can. Yes, I can have. I'm just going to have a cute little tumble. I'm just going to have a little piece in my pocket. I'm just going to get the littlest skull that I could find. It's so cute and so little. Like, it doesn't have to be big, and it's still going to bring a lot to you.
I'm really glad, and maybe this is great that Ashley's not here this week, because I did kind of want to ask you guys while it's just us guys here together and no one else is here. But often I get asked, and I often wonder, does size matter? When it comes to our crystals, of course, that's what I mean. And Kai, would you say no, not necessarily? How do you normally answer that question?
It's never the size, it's how you use it, right? It's the intention, it's the focus. There are definitely some crystals that the bigger they get, the more energetic you will feel from them. Like, there is definitely that thing that comes from bigger pieces, but you can get so much done with so little. As we spoke about last week, sorry, a couple of weeks ago with Jet, like, my two pieces has gotten me through 15 years of crystal work, right? We don't have to have giant pieces of things to achieve great things. And if you have a small anything, add clear quartz, because clear quartz will amplify it, and you will amplify its energy. So if you can get a piece of clear quartz to connect to something smaller, it'll boost it like a receptor, like an amplifier of a radio wave.
Nicholas, does size matter?
Yes, but not necessarily for the reasons people think it does. I mean, no two ways about it. If you have two examples of the same crystal and everything else about them is identical, but one is much larger, you're gonna feel the difference. I mean, I'm gonna hold up two smoky quartz crystals for you. I mean, there is no comparison, right? And yes, size influences the experience of crystal energy, but bigger doesn't mean better. I like to think of the analogy of a speaker. The bigger speaker can be louder. Louder is not better, it's just louder. There are applications where we can work with a small crystal and it feels like an intimate whisper, and that's all we need. But if you need to get someone's attention from down the street, you better shout. So when I do bigger work, things that are not just about me, but about community, about the planet, about connecting with people in bigger ways, I like to have the big guns out for that. I love working with large crystals. I have had at the center of grids crystals that weigh in excess of 2,000 pounds. I did not bring them there. Obviously, I brought the grid to the crystal. But this is the kind of work that I have had the pleasure and privilege to be able to do over my crystal journey. I get to regularly commune with a 130-pound gem quality blue topaz at my day job and an 8-foot tall amethyst bug, which scarcely fits through the door. Um, and and I think it's okay to say that big crystals are good. There's so much, I think, tiptoeing around the idea that you don't need a big crystal to do things and therefore they're the same. You do not need a big crystal to make healing happen, but they're not the same. In the same way that you don't need to have a big house to have a fulfilled life, but a tiny one-bedroom apartment and a sprawling palatial estate, they're not the same. So I think we should just be transparent and say you don't need the big crystal, but they do feel different. And that's, of course, only if all the other parameters are the same. If I have a teeny tiny gem quality emerald and then my big honkin' one that is anything but gem quality, they don't feel the same because it's not a one-for-one comparison. It's apples to oranges. So we do have to hold space for the fact that habit or form, quality, color saturation, all of these other things also impact our experience of crystal's energy. It's not just size. And oftentimes I'm really happy to go for a smaller gem of much finer quality than I am something enormous, but it's also nice to have both at the same time in the case of some of my beloved crystals here.
I totally love that. And I think it's really important that like that whole thing of bigger things can do bigger things. And I think that's a really nice way of putting things. And that is something I discovered at the Natural History Museum in London. Like their gem collection, that big open floor of crystals is just something else, right?
Can I just tell you a story about that museum and that collection, specifically about an emerald? Um, I did not know as a 30-something grown adult that you could just look at a rock and weep in public with people growing increasingly concerned. But the very first time my husband and I traveled, before we married, my husband now, and I traveled to England was in 2019, and the first full day we had in the UK was me teaching a very long class. I'd never actually taught like a whole day crystal class, but the last crystal we talked about was the second to last, was red coral, and we are talking about the myth of Medusa and like this beautiful feminist retelling of it, and that led into the magic of emerald, which I'm really passionate about. And the next day, we go straight to the Natural History Museum, and they've got like the old school glass boxes filled with rocks, which I love, but I know to the average person is not super exciting. So I spent, I don't know, maybe 2.5 hours methodically going through every single one in every box, taking hundreds of pictures. And then I finally get to the vault, they call it, the big swanky fancy exhibit at the end. And I make my way around the exterior part, and then there's like a little island in the middle. And the very last thing that I see on display is an emerald specimen, painstakingly excavated over the process of several years to remove it from matrix. It is a collection of emerald crystals, some of which are longer than 6 inches and gem quality. And the specimen is called the Medusa. It's like her snakes emerging from her scalp. And I tell you, I saw this stone and I just wept and wept and wept. I've never seen an emerald as beautiful as this one. Not in person
That
yet.
no, that little vignette of oh is something else. And their collection of diamonds that they've collected that fluoresce and are all different colors, it like is something else. But it was for me when we got down below the crystals, we came down those big beautiful steps. Right beneath the geological section is like a meter by meter and a half gypsum cluster. Huge, huge thing. And I sat with that thing and it was like, I'm the one that's doing all the work in this place. I am the one that is keeping everything cleansed and in order. I am the one that they all need to be thanking. And I was like, I'm going to sit with you for 5 minutes. Thank you very much for your time. So if you go, make sure you check that one out below because that is a huge thing that's doing a lot of amazing work.
Well, regardless of our audience, I'm grateful for this conversation because I will be in the UK in exactly 2 weeks' time. and that will be somewhere I'm going to go. And I'll go through the gypsum and thank you for your service. Thank you for your service. I'll be very grateful as well. So I think emerald, we've really kind of encapsulated. It is such a amazing crystal. Maybe people have not gone after it because they've gone, oh no, that's too expensive, and that type of thing. And that's why I really wanted to have that conversation about, just find something that works for you and in your budget and bring that energy in. It helps with healing. It helps with self-love. It helps with that abundance. It helps with travel. It is really a crystal must. And when there are so many different green crystals, sometimes maybe emerald gets buried amongst the list of other green crystals you may have in your collection. But I hope today we've been able to open your heart, not only to yourself, but to emerald as well. Now, for those that have written to us and have been concerned because Ashley hasn't been here for 3 weeks, do not worry. It's simply the fact that sometimes when we're traveling, trying to get all 4 of us to talk at the same time can be a bit of a trouble. I won't be here next week because of my travel commitments, but we are still committed to confabbing every week and keeping you updated with all the different crystals. So Ashley will be back next week. She'll be taking over from me to keep these other 2 rowdy bunch under control as well. Until then, go get your emerald out and we will see you next week. Take care and blessed be.